Good morning. Isn't it perplexing that Apple and Apple Intelligence just haven't come into the fore before? How could Apple, of all companies, the original purveyor of Siri, the first virtual assistant, be so dumb over so many years as AI proliferated around them? Well, now the buzz is that Apple is actively exploring an acquisition or a strategic partnership with Perplexity and incorporating Perplexity's technology into its ecosystem. That integration would address Apple's most significant AI weaknesses while leveraging their enormous distribution power and positioning the company to compete directly with Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI on their core turf. It's been 18 years since Siri, a startup which was a spin out founded by three NLP researchers in a DARPA funded project at SRI, was acquired by Steve Jobs, and launched in October 2010 as the first virtual personal assistant and integrated feature of iPhone 4S. Now, Apple has an opportunity to bring their billions of users into the AI fray with another acquisition. It's June 23rd, 2025, and you're listening to the Daily AI Show. Today, I'm joined by Beth Lyons, Brian Mosseri, and Junmi Hatcher. So let me lay it out a little bit. It's just 3 days ago, on June 20th, that Bloomberg was the initial outlet to break the story, citing sources familiar who revealed that Apple executives, including the head of mergers and acquisitions and Eddie Q, the services chief, had internally discussed a potential bid for Perplexity. These discussions were described as preliminary and not yet involving any formal offer or direct talks. News of the talks, however, reportedly caused a 4% dip in Google's stock on Friday, reflecting investor concerns about Apple moving away from Google search. So, both Apple and Perplexity have declined to confirm any negotiations. But the news of this potential partnership or acquisition comes as Apple faces heavy scrutiny from antitrust regulators over its $18 billion agreement with Google, which ensures Google search is the default search engine on all Apple devices. If this acquisition or partnership agreement goes through, this could reduce Apple's reliance on Google, keeping regulators happy alongside with accelerating Siri's AI capabilities. So there you go. Okay, who wants to jump in on that?
There's a ton to jump in on that. That's what's going to make today a fun conversation. First, welcome to everybody in our chat as well. There's a great intro to that, Andy. Really kind of sets up the conversation. You know, I got to be honest with this one, because we don't always do shows that are about like recent news. Obviously, this one that was really interesting, and as you so eloquently like pointed out in the opening there, there's a lot more to this than maybe initially meets the eye. Like when you first read about it, you go, all right, you know, Apple, Perplexity, so what? But like it is a bigger conversation than that. And, you know, you pointed out that, you know, Apple had purchased Siri, essentially. It wasn't something that was homegrown within Apple. And this wouldn't be the first time Apple or a Meta or anybody else has brought in, you know, talent, some upstart or whatever, captured it. Instagram comes to mind with Meta, you know, with Facebook and stuff like that, and making that a huge part of their program and trying to get in early, right? Capture that secret sauce, if you will, if there is any, and that's part of the conversation today is there any secret sauce for Perplexity? What I found, and I was saying this right before we went live, I wanted to share a few of these just to help maybe set the tone of for anybody listening to this about like, well, what are we really talking about here? And of course, nobody really knows what a Siri powered by Perplexity might be like in Apple world. But in a very meta, not the company way, I decided to ask Perplexity, hey, give me some examples, some hypotheticals of what a typical 2025 Siri answer might be, even with its Apple intelligence enhancements, which Jimmy, we could agree is not, yeah. Andy's like, nah, but they say that Siri is better and it does connect over to ChatGPT. I have it on my phone. I have a 16. I foolishly upgraded with high hopes of this being better from a 14 because I didn't have it on the 15 Pro, and it was pointless. There's no reason for me to upgrade. But I wanted to share just a few of these, and we can maybe agree or disagree that this would in fact be the type of answers we can get. But I think it's interesting as to like, you can actually hear in these answers immediately, I think, what a better Siri answer would be. And you could say, yeah, I think Perplexity could actually do that. So let's just do a few of them. You gave me a couple here. This first one here was Siri, what happened? Okay, we're going to call it something else because it's going to come up on my phone.
Unlock your iPhone first.
Never mind, Siri.
I'm sorry, I cannot help with that.
It's like you need to unlock your phone first. Okay, we will call it a better name, like I can't think of one that's a Barbara. We're gonna go with Barbara.
You can go with sorry.
Well, I thought of anything that might still kick it off. I'm trying to get a name this far away. Okay. For the rest of this conversation, this quick part, we'll call it Barbara. Barbara, what happened with the heat wave in California right now? And I don't know that any of this is updated. It was just giving me hypotheticals. This would be a typical Barbara answer. The National Weather Service has issued heat advisories for several areas of California. Temperatures are expected to remain high throughout the weekend. Would you like me to show you more details from recent news articles, right? Something enhanced for Perplexity might sound like this. California is currently experiencing severe heat wave with temperatures of Los Angeles reaching 105 as of this morning. The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warning for Southern California through Friday. According to a report from the LA Times published an hour ago, several cooling centers have opened in downtown LA and San Diego. Would you like directions to the nearest cooling centers or a summary of safety tips? That would be one example. And I think we can hear the difference there. Then I said, okay, this is pretty helpful. Give me a really bad one about cats and dogs. But let's try two or three other ones here. Barbara, remind me to call my dentist tomorrow at 10 a.m. Typical answer. Okay, I've set a reminder to call the dentist tomorrow at 10 a.m. Something with Perplexity might be more like, I've set a reminder. Would you like me to find the dentist phone number and add it to the reminder? Also, do you want directions to the office or to schedule a follow-up appointment? Something that's more multi-turn contextual, which I think was a big part of this. Hey, Barbara, book me a table for two at a sushi restaurant. I always think these are kind of throwaways. I'm not sure how many people use this style, but anyway, here's some sushi restaurants nearby. Would you like me to call one and make a reservation? Something where Perplexity might be more like, I found 3 top-rated sushi restaurants within 2 miles. Gives the names of them. For 2 at 7 p.m. tonight, would you like me to book this table for you or see if other times or other locations? All of these is giving you the source of where it's pulling up. And I'll just do one more here because they're all kind of like this. What's the latest on the presidential election results? Here's what I found on the web. I think that's very, very Barbara-like. And it gives you some headlines, right? That opens in maybe a ChatGPT or something like that. Versus Perplexity. As of 10 minutes ago, candidate A leads with 52% of the vote, while candidate B has 47%. The Associated Press reports that several key states are still counting ballots, with final results expected by midnight. And then it gives you the sources immediately after that and says, would you like live updates or a summary sent to your phone? So I think there's just like, maybe people think they're good. I don't know what you guys think or whatever, but like there's a difference in those types of responses that I could definitely see where a Barbara enhanced with those types of Perplexity like live update, highly cited type responses would be better. I mean, at least for me, I'll say I would prefer the latter to the former. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I absolutely. And I'm a heavy user of Perplexity's voice assistant in the car. And there are times where I try to just check in with Barbara periodically. And there's always I cannot help you with that. Would you like me to go to ChatGPT? So there's immediately a gap in that. Now we go to ChatGPT. What I love about Perplexity's voice assistant is that it writes my question and its answer before it starts to voice it. So if it's something where I want to say, oh, okay, yay, right? Like, I don't want you to read this out to me now. I want you to, like, I want to go and read it. I want to ask a follow-up, and then I want to go back to voice, which is not so seamless. But
Mhm.
ChatGPT, if you have played with that voice assistant, if you want to go to it and not hear it read it all out, it disappears that answer. Right?
Mm.
So, like, it is literally a better voice assistant. Also, it also understands that most people are talking to it in the car and does not cut out as often as ChatGPT does, for
Really?
me anyway. Yeah, I drive a 2010 Prius, so my car may be louder than a bunch of other people's cars, but ChatGPT does not understand that car noises are not me trying to interrupt it. So I
That's
think,
really telling. I mean, I've used it at my computer, but Beth, I wasn't aware that Perplexity's voice mode was actually, I mean, that's kind of telling that it's better in a car like that. I mean, it's kind of a large use case, obviously,
yeah,
of people and how they might use these voice assistants. Or to your point, hey, my wife does this a lot actually, but she just does it with voice notes because she thinks of something in the car and she's like, there's no chance by the time I get to the house that I'm going to remember this, write it down somewhere, whatever. So she'll leave herself voice notes a lot of times. But I
mhm,
like what you're saying, which is like, hey, I don't need you to tell me the answer. What I need you to do is go do the research and go put it somewhere.
yeah,
And
it
maybe in Perplexity or put it in a project in
right.
Perplexity or whatever, like for like Beth's notes, Beth's thoughts while driving or something. I could see that being really valuable.
Yeah. And often what I'm doing, everybody's heard me talk about this. Often what I'm doing is saying, so I have an idea about this. I want to know more about the language that people write about this in, so I can then ask you to do research. So talk
Mm,
to me for a couple times. This is what I'm thinking. What are you hearing from me? My default instruction to Perplexity is reflect back what you heard me say and then ask me a question or make a recommendation, because it inevitably creates a more succinct version of what I said, and it puts it in more regular language, more business like common language. And sometimes I don't want that, but it is also very helpful to hear it from hear my idea in a more succinct way from a slightly more common languaging.
mm.
So
So,
I,
yeah.
I you've heard me talk about this before. Like, I would be very excited if Apple becomes Siri, but if Siri becomes Perplexity. I will not at all be happy if Perplexity becomes Siri. Like,
Oh yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah,
don't
So
break
as
this, please.
the
yeah.
voice assistant is an area that I don't know that Apple would have, flagged badly in the competitions for that. I think they have the internal resources to develop their voice assistant, whatever its name is, because it keeps, launching my home pod here.
Yeah.
Uh, I think they would have done okay even without an integration of Perplexity. But where Perplexity really shines is, for Apple particularly, is there's a lot of players out there who have built very substantial and capable large language models. And Perplexity is among them. The Sonar models within Perplexity and the team that's built the Sonar models and tuned them, that as an acquisition really, accelerates what Apple Intelligence can do, because now they have their own, if they acquire them, they have their own suite of very capable large language models integrated with search. And we talked just very briefly about how Apple today doesn't have a search engine. They don't have an indexing search engine. Well, Perplexity does. So Perplexity brings, in addition to this strong capability in the voice virtual assistant space, they bring in search and, importantly, the models and the development of those models. And the Sonar models are really, really good. I remember you, Brian, often saying you preferred the Sonar model to many of the other models that are available within Perplexity,
Still
because you
do.
can choose.
Yeah,
You
still
can
do. And I
choose
mean,
the
through the
models.
API, we've built some custom solutions with Scaled where it's pushing information into Salesforce into the contacts and account pages. Sonar Pro. And here, I'll give you another. I mean, this has really nothing to do with this one, but I'll give you another reason for that. Perplexity found really early that their users did not like paying more money to get the citations, but also understood the value of getting the citations written out, and so they took that out of the token context. So over thousands upon thousands of call requests, that adds up. They're saving me money by saying, you know what, however they figure it out, we'll eat the cost of the citations, because inside of a Salesforce for my clients, when they're seeing that information, that AI enhanced information reach them, I do want them to trust but verify. And so I want my SDRs and AEs that might be using this product that we put out there, this service, to be able to go, that's really interesting about such and such client. Oh, right here, here's a blue link for number 14 that I can go, just like a Wikipedia page. I can immediately go off and see if that's true, if that came out of a reputable source. And Perplexity's Sonar and Sonar Pro models will just do that for you and put those citations in there. Again, doesn't really have anything to do with today's, but it's a feature that, like, who's really talking about that, but actually makes a big difference for me, and definitely makes me want to work more with that model, because I kind of feel like Perplexity gets it. They get what I'm trying to get out of the model, and they're actively working in that direction, you know?
All right, Junmi, give us the tea.
Well, I wanted to highlight a couple of potential outcomes, right, of this, supposed rumor. And so all of you have talked about things like Beth. Like Beth was saying that definitely wants to make Apple more like Perplexity and not Perplexity like Apple. Well, unfortunately, that is a big concern, because when Apple tends to buy a company, it gets fully absorbed, right? You talked about how Siri was acquired. Even the back in the day with Claris and like some really old software, and this is kind of like along the Adobe line of software as well. These are all examples of a very strong brand with large marketing behind it, because Apple's just as much their brand as their actual hardware or software, right? They are essentially a hardware company that has expanded into software applications, but overall, it's the brand experience that really sells Apple. So I have a feeling that ideally, what we would see from any form of merger or acquisition is that Perplexity be taken in a slightly different tack than they normally do. Normally, it's fully absorbed and homogenized within the larger brand structure. And so I would say ideally what we'd want to see from Apple is, we're going to take all of the best bits, upgrade all of our own brand mechanisms and all of our own internal mechanisms, but leave the Perplexity brand alone or off to the side until after the acquisition, after the adoption, after the acceptance of Perplexity as the underpinnings of any Apple branded approach to, whether it be Siri, search, or doing any sort of compute on device within their own data centers, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually absorbing Perplexity into the whole larger Apple brand, right? Because a purchase is a purchase. They're going to want it. But I think there's still a lot of momentum behind the Perplexity brand and what they're offering and what they're trying to do, and create a competitor for the B2C environment that would compete with and offer an alternative to what ChatGPT is trying to do. And we've seen this by incorporating things like Sheets and, creating charts and those other aspects. Not to mention that they're talking about Comet, right? Their own browser alternative, right?
Yeah.
And that's an easy pivot into the Apple ecosystem as well. And there were rumors or announcements that Perplexity were looking to work with groups like T-Mobile for, building out a partnership for other mobile devices and services and vendors and things like that. So which makes the question of any Samsung talks really interesting as well. So this rumor may have some legs to it, mainly from my viewpoint, because this would be a great way for Apple to snag all those capabilities, have an entire development arm for AI that they don't have to spin up and try and take more talent from. They snatch away the potential of Perplexity from other mobile manufacturers, right? Like Samsung or T-Mobile as a vendor or anything like that, and catch up, because they've been languishing for the last 2 years in the whole AI space. So it makes total sense to me that they would just drop 14 to 20 billion, wrap it all up, and say, "Hey, Perplexity, you do your own thing. We're just going to take everything that you're doing, and you're doing this as a direct vendor kind of thing."
There is, so I looked this up, Jimmy, because I was like, oh, I couldn't have told you the last 3, 4, 5 companies that Apple acquired. And so I thought, let me look this up while Jimmy's talking. So I'm going to say this name wrong, but RAC7 or RAC7 or RACE7, I'm not sure how that's said. It's a video gaming development studio. It was integrated into Apple Arcade. That was this year. Pixelmator Team, Data Collab, Darwin AI, BIS Records. This is going back to 2023. Mira Labs, I remember that one. Augmented reality company supporting Apple Vision Pro, AR and VR initiatives. So, and then this says there's also a stealth reporting of an acquisition of Y Labs this year, a Seattle-based AI observability startup, though this has not been officially announced. What I found interesting to go along with this, Jimmy, is that again, this is from Perplexity as far as me doing research about Apple. So I have not had time to validate these sources, but to your point, it says most of the acquisitions are quietly integrated into Apple's irrelevant product teams or divisions. So there is a full absorption, which would be interesting, right? That goes against maybe, hey, Perplexity, you keep doing your own thing. But it also says they rarely announce small acquisitions. This would not be a small acquisition. In fact, this would be their largest. If they were anywhere near the $14 billion valuation, this would be their largest since Beats. Way back in the day, right? So it says Apple rarely announces small acquisitions and instructs acquired employees not to update their profiles to reflect the acquisition, maintaining a high degree of secrecy. So there is some precedence of Apple saying, just, status quo, just keep doing what you're doing. And maybe their parent company, their actual paycheck in some weird way comes from Apple, but nobody would ever really know. And they've done that on purpose. Also really important is the talent side of this. So this could be a big part of, I don't know this, but maybe this is a big part of why people are seeking out Perplexity. Potentially, because we know Meta also apparently tried to make an offer on Perplexity. We also don't technically know whether Perplexity has any interest in this right now. So there's that part of it. But perhaps it's the talent side of Perplexity. Apple places high value on technical staff and often structures deals to ensure key engineers join Apple, sometimes even tying the deal's completion to employee retention. So I think, I'm just listening to all you guys and trying to absorb this. Andy, you're kind of saying like, hey, they probably have enough on the side of like their voice intelligence, stuff like that. But perhaps there's a few people at Perplexity that they feel, or maybe the founders and stuff like that, that they just feel are, would be a massive gain. Maybe it's a play of get them before somebody else does, to your point, Jimmy. Maybe it's like, hey, we have the money. I mean, look, Apple's sitting on cash. They're okay. I also followed this up by asking if Perplexity is even profitable right now. And there's actually no public figures on that per Perplexity. They say there's no public figures on it, but it says they're on track to generate $100 million in annual revenue this year, up from $20 million in 2024, a 400% year-over-year increase. Okay, that's no joke, right? So they're clearly growing. This comes primarily from the $20 per month plan. That's what I have. That's what I'm using right now. They process over 400 million search queries per month and has about 22 million active users, which is higher than what I originally saw. The company has raised over 900 million in funding and is valued at up to 18 billion as of 2025, indicating strong investor confidence, but also suggesting ongoing high expenditures on infrastructure, talent, and growth. Anyway, just want to throw that into the mix of this conversation.
Perplexity, when you watch Perplexity and the way that it is developing things and rolling out, it does not seem like they are trying for a profitable company right now, because they're in a big growth cycle. What I will point out is that Apple has a tricky relationship with keeping teams intact in like AI kind of space, because the Siri team was intact, right? Siri was absorbed and they operated as their own like mini thing inside Apple. And that blew up this year because the Siri team didn't want to do what Apple wanted to do, like felt it was the wrong whatever. And then Apple did two things. It moved the Siri location to another Apple location, which was like move or leave. And ultimately, the people who were left were rolled into another department. Like those were news stories that came out over the last year, which is now 6 months. So maybe some of that is 2024. But it seems to me that this could be a short-term process, given how quickly AI changes, and that it very potentially sets up a conflict between Apple feeling like it knows what the direction is and Perplexity. Perplexity is a turn on a dime thing. That's what they look like, right? I'm sure there are lots of big conversations that happen in that turning on a dime, but they are much more responsive than I see any of the other companies being.
Is it perhaps because they're smaller? I mean, is that obviously they're not a giant warship like Apple at this point. So, I mean, they certainly probably can move faster.
Right. But they move faster than like Anthropic. They move fast. They move fast like Notebook LM moved fast, right? That seems to me to be what I'm seeing in the way that they throw things at the wall. So I don't think they're tiny, but I do think they're still functioning like a startup.
And what about Comet? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Because we don't really know anything about Comet other than if you go to the landing page, it's a splash page that says join the waiting list, and we're building a new browser experience. And we just saw GenSpark last week with Carl's great demo of that on the show, and other tools like that I know you've talked about, Andy. I haven't really played with them, like Manus and others. And I think there was even another one that was newer since the GenSpark conversation. Andy, you could talk on that. But like what about this Comet? Like that doesn't seem like an easy fit with Apple, but then again, maybe yes. I don't know. Maybe it's
Comet exists. It's rolling out.
Dang it.
Really? No way.
How do you turn off that girl? I don't know. So
get a pixel, Junmi? Is that
it was bound to happen again? Anyway, sorry, Andy, you were about to say something. Please ignore Barbara. And,
I wanted to just say that Perplexity also brings something that Apple doesn't have at all, and that is a purchase in enterprise. Like Apple is not B2B in any meaningful respect other than by providing hardware, right? I mean, you do see lots of Apple products inside enterprise, but they don't provide enterprise services, at least to my knowledge. They may have some small division that does that. But Perplexity has their tools and their API services. They've delivered document connectors. They have collaborative spaces for teams, and so Apple doesn't have a big position in business markets except as a hardware provider. But the team that comes across from Perplexity, which has been focusing to a large degree, I think, on an enterprise or businessy kind of tool set that can work inside corporations, they bring all of that to Apple as well.
Yeah.
That option for them. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I usually see them to answer your question, Andy. It's really just deployment. Like you said, it's hardware. I see them either what enterprise level things that they have access to is inventory management, device management, and then hardware and software capabilities for any creative department. That's always integrated. But yeah.
And
Beth, you-
Perplexity's deal with Samsung is non-exclusive. So we don't know if Apple would be willing for a non-exclusive deal, because that could also be something that gets put into the mix. And there's unless Apple totally brings them in-house, right? Then if you don't bring them in-house, but you what is the antitrust thing about? It's Google and Apple being
Search.
too powerful.
No, it's at Google is
It's
the
just Google.
default search on that many devices, which is
Okay.
funny because that was the same argument for Internet Explorer and Apple and all those kinds of things as well.
Okay.
Well, I was going to point out, remember, we talk about non-exclusive with Samsung. You got to be careful with those things, because I can think of two things right off the bat. Three things off the bat when a company, specifically Apple, likes to force decisions on its clientele. We can remember them giving everybody the YouTube album and people said, please take it back. We can remember Apple insisting on you using Apple Maps when it was clearly inferior to Google Maps. Now they stopped that, and I've been using Google Maps on my phone for a while, but that drove me nuts because I was like, there's clearly a better app out here and you couldn't use it. It was like, Apple's like, no, you can't touch Google. We want you to use Apple. And it was like, well, fix your maps, but also like even like more hardware type stuff. Like, I don't know, this is what Samsung did, but remember back in the day with like, it probably was Nokia or one of them when they came out and Facebook's like, now you'll have a Facebook button on your phone. It would be like putting a ChatGPT button on something, or a Perplexity button on your phone, like a, stickered on there, and that splashes and then it goes away because people go, I don't want a blue Facebook button on my phone. But that was like, these are all these kind of like product developments that come out through the cycle. And I mean, like, I think we're sort of doomed to repeat a lot of this with the AI side of it. Is like, what's the new flashy thing? Can we slap it on your phone? Now we don't have buttons anymore on our phones, but I remember going through that. And I'm curious though, if Apple was to do this, they don't have a great track record of like, they do try to guess and then insist, as opposed to just giving their users a little bit more freedom. I mean, even from the hardware side of things, they just got around to USB-C, and it wasn't because they wanted to. It's because Europe forced their hand, and thank God, right? And they finally decided to get away from the Lightning connector and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. Like, I'm an Apple family as things go. I do not use MacBooks at all. I'm a PC guy, but then when it comes to any sort of devices, Apple TV in my house. I don't have Apple speakers, oddly enough. I have the Alexas, but all of our phones in our house are Apples. And that's just because it's easier to stay on one ecosystem. And it could have just as easily been Google and Android too, but it's just easier to stay as the dad in the house. It's easier to stay all together to make my life easier. And I do like CarPlay an awful lot. So I don't know. It's like, I'm with you, Beth, I guess. I'm kind of like, okay, maybe, but please don't hurt Perplexity, because I really like Perplexity, and I'm like, I don't want you to ruin it, but also maybe there's some potential upside to this. I don't know.
Let's think about the impact on another major player. Like we've talked about how Google, may be significantly impaired in terms of their revenue by many billions of dollars by losing the default search status inside the Apple ecosystem. But there's another company out there that wants to be on your phone at all times, and that's Meta. Mm-hmm. But they have to play at the application level. You have to launch WhatsApp or launch Facebook in order to access their AI services. or download the Meta AI app. But if you put search and AI inside the operating system in a way like that voice assistant is a part of that operating system, that shortcuts access to AI for the many billions of Apple users. And so Meta would have a harder time if this Perplexity Apple deal proceeds with a tight integration of search and AI into Apple devices at the OS level, basically, finding their way to their customers again through those apps. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't going to go to the Facebook app anymore or Instagram or whatever. So they're going to be there. But if just like now, when we say the word, the phone is listening and the home pods are listening. If you say the word, that's intercepting your AI inquiries.
Yeah.
Before the applications.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're catching it before you get to that end result. I do want to point out, Andy, I'll push back a little bit here in that I do think we're seeing some division here of what these companies ultimately want to be. I get the impression that Meta wants to be your AI buddy, and they want this Meta assistant to play and be helpful across their ecosystem, which, in the States, we don't think much about WhatsApp, but obviously WhatsApp is massive. As soon as I go over to Europe, everything switches over to WhatsApp because that's how you're going to talk to businesses. In China, it's not WhatsApp, but there's other tools over there that are very, very popular like that, where they do everything through the messaging app. And we just don't necessarily have that set up in the States. But obviously it's bigger than the States. But anyway, my point was, I think Meta, I don't know that they're trying to be Perplexity in the sense that Perplexity is very good, as we were giving those hypothetical examples, not real-time examples, of Perplexity giving up-to-dated, cited, verifiable, low hallucination type results that we're hoping that Perplexity does. And obviously there's a huge synergy that could happen with a voice assistant, either it be the Echoes in the house or Barbara, right? Either way would have value for that. We haven't even talked about Amazon and what they potentially are building. I just think Meta is they're trying to it's over here in their ecosystem. We're watching Anthropic and what they're building through Enterprise. ChatGPT OpenAI rather wants to be your AI assistant through life, I think, and they have a different moat that they're trying to build. But my pushback would be Perplexity, though, other than Google, is really seems to be focused on, obviously, yes, projects and things they have going on for business, but it really is all centered around how can we help people or businesses search and consume information in a really, really valuable way. And of course, we're only talking about the voice side of Apple, but of course, that's not the only way that Perplexity would have real value to Apple. Obviously, in just using the Siri browser. I'm sorry, not the Safari browser. I didn't catch on that one. The Safari browser on my computer, which I don't do, but I could see that if there starts to be this integration, I already have the standalone Perplexity browser, the app on my computer that's outside of the Chrome window, the browser window. I could see how Apple would want to make something more standalone that maybe goes a little more closer to whatever Comet's going to be. Maybe Apple is already working on that. So we're talking a lot about the voice side of it, but I do think there's more to this that could be potentially valuable to Apple. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't really see Meta as trying to jump in this pool, other than your point about, Andy, which I think is valid, of the intercept, which I think is a really interesting idea.
And thinking along those lines, I think, what does Perplexity get out of this, right? And that's the main, beyond just the money. Look, they're a startup, so I'm sure there's going to be some money quotient on that, but it's also, they still have their original founders. That's who their guiding lights are. And this is usually, if it's founder focused right now, that means it's all mission, right? And so that's their motivation track. Perplexity gets to get on how many millions of devices, or maybe 1 billion devices. And for Perplexity, if they can work out the deal where they still get to maintain their cohesion, at least for a while, then that is a great time to make a move like this so that it cuts off the ever-growing transfer of information search that ChatGPT is absorbing. And that's just going to keep increasing, right? That's why they're starting to talk about this LLMEO or GEO instead of SEO kind of build out. That, and more conversations are starting to build that way, because that search through those products, through OpenAI products, are going to just increase and increase. So this would be a great move for Perplexity to say, okay, we still want to be Perplexity. We'll give you everything, but just put us as the default now. And then that's going to be, that in itself will facilitate a huge shift. So it's not even Google not being on Apple devices, but any other search being put on Apple devices massively swings the pendulum the other way.
Yeah,
And
that
so
would be my
that might be a
preferred
big
outcome.
win.
Yeah, my preferred. I agree with you. My preferred outcome of this, if I could get in the boardroom and talk to the people and explain to them why this is important to me, would be absolutely right. It wouldn't be a full on absorption and buyout. It would just be an agreement to make Perplexity the default for Barbara, or whatever. So I would prefer that, because that's kind of what they tried to do with ChatGPT. And then they said, Barbara, well, it'll also have Google Gemini too. Like, you'll have options on your phone. And it was like, Apple kind of took the stance of like, we're not really going to tell you which one you're going to be able to toggle. And hey, that's great, right? You have options, which is a very not Apple thing, because I think they sort of realized they weren't ready with Barbara. And now the best case is they're saying spring of 26. I'm not sure how much anybody believes that anymore, because of sort of the debacle of the rollout and missed expectations of what Apple Intelligence, their AI, Apple had to try to rebrand the letters A by AI. And we've all seen their super flashy, but very little substance. And also we're the first ones to come up with this type demos that they put out. And then, Android goes, didn't we do this a year ago? And Apple's like, no. This is an Apple version of it. Like, we're the first. People with Android phones every time are like, haven't we had this? Or Samsungs are like, haven't we had this forever?
So another piece that I think, as we're talking about ChatGPT and what they get, is that Perplexity has added memory. Perplexity has added both of those pieces. You can tell it to remember specific things about you, and you can give it permission to look at your previous searches. Now, I do random searches on Perplexity, so please don't do that, because every search that I use Perplexity, like I used to use Google, right? Like, when does it become summer in DC? Right? Like, what exact time? I don't then want you to assume that I'm asking that as like a big chunk, because it's most recent, right? Like that kind of stuff. But imagine Siri being someone who actually starts to know you, right? And just for people who've like missed that part of the beginning, when we're referencing Barbara, we're referencing the S lady wiretap that I just said. And I'm sorry if I set off anybody else's thing, but that would be amazing, right? That is kind of the promise. Was the promise of the A lady wiretap on the Echo Show things, right? Because there are so many opportunities in a out loud conversational way to respond with like previous knowledge. The A lady wiretap always wants me to buy more Amazon stuff, and that's not the most interesting thing about me. I would like more. Get to know me beyond my Amazon wish list, which actually I'm trying to get away from. But like those kinds of things, I think are possible with the S lady wiretap if it's powered by Perplexity.
By the way, another cool idea I've always talked about in the car, being able to do the choose your own adventure. Always up to date Trivial Pursuit with Perplexity in a car. right? It's
That's
always a
true.
trivia game that always has yesterday's or last 20 minutes ago's thing. So if that was part of a wedge piece or something in your car playing along with family and it's backed by Perplexity, like not only do you have to have good knowledge, you have to have up-to-date knowledge. By the way, I'm awful at those games or the Jeopardies and I'm awful at those. But you could see how something like that would be very, very fun in a game night type scenario at a house, because you could just be using that as part of it. It's the same concept as doing. I talked about doing the karaoke, but always doing like AI songs, and it's not about singing well. It's about how well can you make the new AI words that you've never seen before fit with the song that you're trying to do karaoke. I think that's hysterical, because then it's kind of like me growing up on Weird Al Yankovic my whole life, and that sounds amazing to me. Somebody should definitely do that in some local bar if it's not me. But yeah, I think it opens up all these, like, we talk about business a lot and stuff, but it opens up all these fun ideas of ways that barber or lady wiretaps can be more integrated into our lives. And you mentioned something, Beth. I mean, you joked about it, saying like, please don't remember all my memory. But if memory was right,
Yes.
a cool version of that is, hey, Brian, 2 days beforehand, my phone pops up with just a silent message that says, listen, the summer solstice is in 3 days. You've asked for 3 years in a row when and what the summer solstice is. And so we're going to preempt you on your phone with a quick notification, silent notification that I can tap on that says, this is what it means. It means that it's got the most sun. It's the longest day of the year. And it's on June 21st or whatever it is. Like, I'm just going to get ahead of this because you're going to ask me and I'm going to pretend like you've never asked before. And we're just going to get ahead of this, Brian. And I think there's about 1,000 things like that in any given year that would be super valuable to me. The problem is that, as we know it right now, the memory is not advanced enough.
Right.
And to your point, Beth, it would be a bunch of what that you don't care about. But if it was intelligent enough to know the things you do, yeah, that would be great. There's all sorts of things like birthdays and things that come up that I want to be reminded of, or tax season or whatever. I only need to know it one time a year. So if my phone starts to become a little more intelligent in that way,
Right.
Barber becomes more intelligent in that way, that is really valuable to my life. And I could see where a Perplexity would play a huge role in that.
Yeah. I can
Now, let
see
me
that.
add some numbers here. Just in the background, I've been asking Perplexity about, what the numbers are. And Meta claims across their core platforms 3.4 billion daily users.
Mhm.
So now what they mean is 3.4 billion people is the sum total of people who use any one of those things daily, on a day, right? So it's a very large number. Any guesses on how many active iPhones there are in the world?
Oh,
It's less than that. It's only 1.4 billion, because there's so many Android phones out there globally, right? I mean, iPhone does have some purchase anywhere, but it's only 1.4 billion. I didn't bother to search, like how many people are using, iPads and MacBooks and so on. But that's a more difficult interface because you're really working through the browser then. And it's the browser that's controlling really what the sort of the desktop operating system is in a sense. But this is to basically point out that Perplexity is going to gain the most in such a combination. And it's because currently they have somewhere between 20 and 30 million monthly active users, which is a tiny fraction of the scale that we're talking about that they would suddenly be equipped to deliver. And they would also have the deep, deep treasure chest that Apple has to expand the server operations that are necessary to support a much larger population of Perplexity users. And it might not be branded Perplexity anymore, but it would be the Perplexity search and the Perplexity AI models behind the scene that are running the inference for Apple Intelligence. So I think it's probable, if there were a full acquisition, that the very clever naming of Perplexity, because Perplexity is a term of art in AI that references just how confused the response is. that brand may ultimately go away or not be as prominent. It'll be, a part of history, and an important part of history, and one that we're all very, very proud of, because we've all been adherents to and advocates of the use of Perplexity, and we've been justified in that by the incredible growth and importance, and now strategic importance, of the possible integration of Perplexity with Apple's ecosystem.
And I just want to point out too, we've talked about 1.7 billion Apple iPhones and stuff like that. But you know what we have one of, and could be a big thing?
Thumper.
Thump, thump, thump.
Thumper.
Thumper. Yeah, it's for anybody who was just listening to this on Spotify, going, "What the hell?" Like, that's an old joke. You have to be a fan of the show for a while for that one. But
It's a deep cut.
Thumper, which, by the way, I have to cover the whole because it no longer fits the.
Oh yeah, the change
Oh,
size.
well, we can upgrade Thumper, I think.
Yeah.
I-
Alibaba probably has a fix for that, I'm sure.
Andy, I appreciate it, but I am not ready to speak of Perplexity in fond past tense.
Ooh.
Like,
No.
no, just no.
Yeah, so let's hope that it doesn't go away. Let's hope it has a persistent place in the pantheon of AI, because they've earned it, they deserve it, and we like it. All right, any last thoughts before we go?
Well, just real quick, Jude said, hey, Barbie, because he was talking about how every time I said Barbara, he was imagining Barbara Bushbot replacing, you know what? And then he said, hey, Barbie. And I just wanted to bring that up because, number one, missed opportunity by me to say, hey, Barbie. Also, just rewatched that movie last night, and I do not understand how it didn't win all the awards. Has nothing to do with today's show. I just want to throw that out there as a Brian point. Barbie was screwed. That movie is as phenomenal as the first time I watched it. Just want to throw that out there. That's all I'm saying. I don't understand how Greta Gerwig did not win best director for that. It's insane to me. Okay, I'm off my best.
Okay.
And Jen agrees, by the way.
Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to the Daily AI Show, and today is Monday. Wow. And so tomorrow, I have no idea what our show is, but Beth, you must know.
Tomorrow, we are doing the McKinsey Report, and Carl is hosting. We got into the McKinsey Report during either a news show or one of our Friday, one of the topics that we talked about. But we all said, wow, this could be a full show. So it will now be a full show.
Excellent. All right. And then on Wednesday, of course, we'll cover all the latest and greatest news, and hopefully we'll have more to report about this rumor of integration of Perplexity into the Apple ecosystem. Find us at thedailyAIshow.com. Sign up for our newsletter. It's a fine piece of work. Comes out just once a week and gives you everything you need to know to stay abreast of AI as we progress. And our active community is available at thedailyAIshowcommunity.com. Join us then. And goodbye for today. See you tomorrow.
Aloha.